This might just be the end for me. The conclusion to the Spider-Man trilogy from the Marvel Cinematic Universe was one that everyone loved. It was the biggest movie of the year. Me, on the other hand, felt quite different about this. This film came out post-Endgame. The Marvel Universe was heading into a new direction, full of new, lesser-known characters and endless TV shows that no one really cared about. It's basically just heading into mediocrity, and although No Way Home does stand above all of these projects, it is just an average film. Not a bad film by any means, but I think this movie gets a lot more love because of how attached audiences are to the previous Spider-Man franchises. And that overlooks the story of No Way Home, which in essence is very dull and kind of a mess. However, you can also say the same about Endgame. The manner in which that story unfolds is played in the most safe and fan service way, completely contradicting the ballsy writing of Infinity War. But what makes No Way Home different is their shrewdness to see the multiverse as a goldmine, an opportunity that can be used for many movies to come, which they have been doing in formulaic fashion to the point where it has become unbearable. First things first, this movie would not exist without Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There, I said it. Marvel saw what Sony did with Into the Spider-Verse, saw its overwhelming success and thought, hey, why not do that, but live action and with the nostalgia cranked up to 11. It's clear Marvel wanted to capitalize on the idea of the multiverse, but where Into the Spider-Verse used it as a means to explore themes of identity, legacy, and self-discovery in a fresh, innovative way, No Way Home treats it like a gimmick, an excuse to bring in old characters simply for the sake of fan service. Let's not forget that Into the Spider-Verse introduced audiences to the idea of multiple Spider-People existing in different universes. It was the first film to take this concept seriously and use it to tell a rich, layered story about what it truly means to be Spider-Man. The multiverse wasn't just a flashy plot device, it was integral to the emotional arcs of characters like Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker. Each Spider-Person was distinct and had their own struggles, and the film used the multiverse to explore the idea that anyone could wear the mask, something that gave the movie heart and thematic depth. In comparison, No Way Home takes the multiverse concept and strips it down to pure nostalgia. Instead of using it to advance the story in a meaningful way, or delve into what makes each version of Spider-Man unique, the film merely parades its former heroes across the screen like action figures being taken out of a dusty toy box. Sure, it's fun to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield don the Spider-Man suit again, but that's where the excitement ends. Their appearances are not woven into the story in any substantial way. They exist solely to make fans cheer in the theatre and give social media something to meme about. The fact that the most memorable part of the movie is when all three Spider-Men are together says everything about how shallow the rest of the film is. It's a moment that blatantly triggers a wave of nostalgia, but it doesn't add anything new to the character of Peter Parker or to the Spider-Man mythos. Apart from the fan service reveals, the plot moves in such a safe way. You know every dip and turn before it even happens. There's no real suspense, no surprises. The movie tries to play on our emotions with Peter's relationship with MJ and Ned, but they're so surface level and rushed that it's impossible to care. When Aunt May dies, a death that was so unnecessary and lacked zero emotional impact. It's supposed to be this gut-wrenching moment. Instead, it feels like the filmmakers are ticking off a box on the hero's tragedy checklist. The whole scene comes off as manipulative and unearned, a cheap ploy to give Peter an emotional turning point that the script didn't actually work for. Think back to when Uncle Ben died in the original Spider-Man film, or when Gwen Stacy died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Those deaths had weight because we were invested in the relationships and felt the emotional stakes. Here, Aunt May's death feels like a lazy attempt to mimic those beats, as if the filmmakers knew they needed some sort of emotional shock but didn't know how to genuinely build towards it. And that responsibility speech again. Why do they keep twisting the words? We know what they're trying to say. The general plot is quite lame but also flawed. Peter is revealed to be Spider-Man to the public following the conclusion of Far From Home. He has been framed for the attacks in London by Mysterio, and MJ and Ned are revealed as his associates. So they're all labelled as dangerous and Spider-Man is now a murderer wanted by the police. It's not like he just saved the world from Thanos. Let's all forget about that. He can't be a hero, he must be a villain. So because the three are labelled as criminals, Peter, MJ and Ned get their MIT applications rejected. And this upsets Peter so much that in a world where aliens exist and adventures await, MIT is what makes you go to Doctor Strange to erase everyone's memories of him being Spider-Man. And this is what sets off the worst excuse of having a multiverse where you can have the villains of other Spider-Man universes merge together. Now, Doctor Strange is one of the few highlights of this film. It's rare to see an MCU movie where a supporting character has a real purpose beyond a cameo. Strange serves as both a mentor and an obstacle, and it's nice to see him play a significant role. But even then, we have to acknowledge how absurd it is that Strange loses a fight with Spider-Man. We all know how powerful Strange is. He's literally the Sorcerer Supreme. He fought Thanos, he manipulated time itself. It's just convenient for the plot to go on. And the way Peter defeated him. Oh, the mirror dimension is just geometry? Square the radius, divide by pi? Shut the hell up. This was such a dumb thing to put in the story. They thought the geometry explanation was meant to be clever, but it came off as obnoxious and lazy writing trying to disguise itself as intelligent. It's like they knew they needed to get Strange out of the way, so they just gave us a random science-sounding solution that wouldn't hold up under the slightest scrutiny. And this is just one of the many moments where the plot sacrifices logic for convenience. When Peter apologizes to MJ and Ned for the whole memory spell disaster, MJ's response is basically, "Next time, tell us." It's such a throwaway line, and the whole scene is awkwardly written. Zendaya, who's a good actress, looks like she's trying her best to make it work, but there's only so much an actor can do with dialogue that feels forced. This could have been a chance for the film to introduce some actual conflict within the trio, a chance to add emotional depth and stakes. Maybe MJ or Ned could have pushed back, shown some anger or distrust, and given us a moment where these characters felt like real people. But no, the movie just brushes over it and keeps the dynamic unchanged, losing an opportunity to make the film's relationships matter. Visually, the movie is ugly. While the Doctor Strange effects are the only real eye candy, the rest of the movie looks flat and artificial. Everything looked fake and over the top. Even a normal scene with two actors talking felt like they were set against a green screen backdrop. Compare this to the Sam Raimi trilogy, where every shot felt alive, where the camera angles were dynamic, and the city felt real. Raimi used practical effects and creative cinematography to give Spider-Man's world a sense of character and energy. No Way Home in comparison feels like it was designed entirely on a computer, which it literally was. Even the Spider-Man suit, which should be vibrant and iconic, looks dull and overproduced. How do you manage to make the color red look boring? The film's reliance on fan service is both its biggest strength and its greatest flaw. Yes, seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return as their respective Spider-Men is exciting. It's fun, it's nostalgic, and it's a crowd pleaser. But that's the problem. Without these cameos, there's almost nothing to this film. They do handle their versions quite well though, providing some sense of closure with how their storylines concluded in their previous franchises. In particular for Garfield's Spider-Man, he came out of this movie with the most development, even though he's in it for a quarter of the story. But it's propped up entirely by the nostalgia factor, banking on people's love for the past rather than giving them something new to enjoy. It's essentially Marvel saying, "Remember this? You liked this before, right? Well, here it is again." While I will say that they handled Maguire and Garfield's appearances well, especially Garfield, who gets a touching moment of redemption, these moments only highlight how little the movie has to offer outside of them. One thing I can't argue on is how all three actors portray Peter Parker in pretty much a perfect way. Even though they're all different, they play the role effortlessly. The final showdown is just another CGI-infested battle, as predictable as they come. The whole scaffolding setting feels uninspired and claustrophobic, lacking any sense of scale or excitement. The Lizard is completely forgettable, and Jamie Foxx's Electro might as well be playing a different character, one who's more Jamie Foxx than Electro. And it's clear he wasn't interested in revisiting the awkward, nerdy version from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, so instead he just plays himself. Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe, on the other hand, are the only saving graces among the villains. Especially Dafoe, who throws himself into the Green Goblin role with the same energy that made him a standout in the original Spider-Man. But despite their efforts, the climax feels generic, a repetitive spectacle we've seen in countless other superhero movies. Marvel has become a victim of its own success. They've locked themselves into a formula, one that relies on quippy dialogue, predictable arcs, and the promise of the next big crossover. No Way Home falls right into this pattern. There's no originality, no attempt to break free from the formula. It's like Marvel knows the fans will show up as long as they throw in enough nostalgia and Easter eggs. The problem is, if you take that all away, there's nothing left. No emotional resonance, no narrative innovation, it's just a hollow shell designed to keep the franchise churning out movies. The biggest issue, ultimately, is that No Way Home feels like it has no identity. It doesn't feel like anyone's vision. Raimi's Spider-Man films has a distinct voice and a sense of style. Even Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man films, despite their flaws, had a point of view. But No Way Home feels like a product designed by committee. A film that's calculated to please audiences but lacks any personality. It's safe, generic, and above all, soulless. A film that could have been directed by an AI and no one would know the difference. Spider-Man No Way Home isn't a terrible movie, it's just painfully average. It's the kind of film that rides the wave of its own nostalgia without offering anything meaningful or groundbreaking. In truth, it's a safe, formulaic MCU entry that hinges entirely on the thrill of seeing past Spider-Man and iconic villains once again, not on crafting a compelling story or developing its characters in a meaningful way. If you strip away the fan service, the emotional boost of seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return, or the thrill of revisiting old foes like Green Goblin and Doc Ock, what's left is a forgettable, overly CGI'd spectacle that follows a predictable path with little heart. It's a film that, if not for those nostalgic moments, would likely be overlooked as just another superhero installment lost in the crowded MCU slate. The truth is, No Way Home isn't about pushing Spider-Man's story forward or exploring new themes. It's about selling nostalgia, plain and simple. And while that may work for some, it ultimately reveals the film's biggest flaw. It's a movie built on moments rather than substance. It's a fun, nostalgic ride, but one that fades as soon as the credits roll. For all its hype and multiverse excitement, No Way Home is nothing more than a flashy reminder of past glories. A movie that, without its fan service, would have been as forgettable as any mid-tier superhero flick.